everybody, and thank you all for coming today for this really great special screening. My name is Miguel Penabella. I am the Assistant Director of the Carsey-Wolf Center. I'm joined today by Andy Jurgensen on my left, who is the editor of this film and is also an alumnus of UCSB and our Film and Media Studies program. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's a bunch of people I need to thank, but we only have so much time, so I'd like to thank just one person for right now, which is Joe Palladino, our former advisor who helped put this together. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Joe. I don't think he's here today, but he wants to share, his excitement for this event, and also to thank you for coming. Yes. And thank you, everybody here, for coming. But I wanted to get to as many questions as I can, because I have so many, and I'm sure a lot of you probably have a lot of questions, which we'll save for the end. Andy, since I mentioned you're an alumnus of the program, and we're really thrilled to have you on stage, can you reflect on your time here at UCSB? What classes or experiences were particularly valuable for you?
Yeah, I graduated in 2004. I had a great time here. I have a real core group of friends in LA now that I've been friends with for 20 years. And they're all like UCSB alumni with me, and it's such a good support system. But yeah, my first editing class was here. I learned how to edit on Final Cut Pro at Kerr Hall on really old iMacs. And I remember I took, actually with Janet Walker, who's right here, I took a great documentary class that I still remember to this day. I took a really amazing film noir class with Anna Brazucci. Oh, she's here too? Okay, great. And I also did two 106s. So I was the editor on one, and then I also directed a documentary about a bingo bus. So that was, wow. Those probably were my favorite classes.
We just had our 106 pitches yesterday, so I'm sure some of our students who did that are probably here and would love to talk to you about your time at 106. Can you talk about any particular films that you watched during your time as an undergrad that made an impact on you? I do remember in the very first film class, which is the intro to film studies, I remember we watched the two versions of Blade Runner. Wow. The theatrical version and then the director's cut with the voiceover. And I remember I had never seen the movie before, and I remember it clicked. My brain was starting to go into critical analysis mode. So I do remember that being a movie that was important to me. And another thing is I remember sophomore year seeing Punch Drunk Love on State Street with my friend. And I don't think I had seen Boogie Nights before that, or Magnolia, but I still remember going to that movie and coming out, and now 20 years later, I'm working for Paul, so kind of funny, yeah. Yeah, that's really great, that's really cool, really great. I actually wanted to get to that since you've had a very long and successful creative collaboration with Paul Thomas Anderson, dating all the way back to 2014's Inherent Vice. I was just curious how you first met and how that came together.
Well, I worked as an assistant editor for a long time. You just got to do your dues, Mm-hmm. And I was working for Leslie Jones, who was actually the editor of Punch Drunk Love and The Master. I had connected with her, and I was an assistant on some other movie, and she was asked to cut Inherent Vice with Paul. So she brought me on, just as an assistant. So that was my first, time I was working with Paul. And then just kind of little things came up, little music videos, for Joanna Newsom, and little things that he'd just say, hey, you want to cut this? You want to cut this music video? And, I'd go in on a weekend and help him cut it. And it just kind of progressed from there. I worked on a few other videos. He asked me to be the associate editor on Phantom Thread with Dylan, who's another editor that he's worked with. And so I did that, and then I cut kind of like a music documentary for him, and worked on this Netflix sort of extended music video for Tom York, and we did some stuff with Radiohead and Haim. And so it just kind of evolved to him asking me to do Licorice Pizza, to cut that, because Dylan wasn't available, and for whatever reason, he gave me the chance to do that. So then, yeah, that was a good experience, and it just, now we have a working relationship. It's now been like over 10 years that we've been working together in various capacities, and he likes to just use people in his circle. When you like start to trust a circle of people, like a creative circle, it feels comfortable to just, that there are going to be people there that are going to see your vision through to the end. So.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the film that we just watched, which is phenomenal. What were some of the key takeaways or conversations that you had with Paul about how the film should be put together?
Well, reading the script, it's a wild ride, obviously. So we knew there was always going to have to be this momentum, this propulsion just going through, throughout. But, one thing that we were really aware of is if it just keeps going fast through to the end, it's going to be exhausting. It's just not, it's not going to be effective. So it's like you have to build these peaks and valleys throughout. So like in a way, that's kind of like the Christmas adventure scenes sort of acts as these valleys where you just are allowing an audience to just breathe, for a second and not have music, not have Johnny's music. And there's also some like kind of emotional scenes that also give you that just release. So that was something that we were always aware of. Right.
And you've noted in other interviews, and we had a conversation earlier today over lunch, that you travel with the crew during production, like in London for Phantom Thread and throughout California for this film, including actually a sequence shot here in Santa Barbara County. Can you tell us about those experiences, where you went, what your day-to-day looked like, and the kind of work that you did with the crew?
Sure. So one of Paul's processes is he has dailies screenings at the end of every shoot day. Right. So that involves, Paul shoots on film, and in this case we shot on two cameras. We shot Super 35, and we also shot on VistaVision cameras, which was kind of a new thing that maybe we'll talk about later. So the film gets shot and gets sent back to Photochem down in LA. They develop it and they print it, and then they are sending the prints back to us. So we're not in any sort of digital world yet. It's just the film prints. And so at all the locations, we'd set up like a mobile screening room sort of thing, and we had a VistaVision projector, and we would, at the end of the shoot day, just play the dailies. It was like a double system, so we'd sync up the audio with the picture, and we would just have this like communal experience of watching the raw footage, and department heads are there, some of the actors are there, and it's just it's just seeing the footage on the big screen, looking at not only technical things, but you're just looking at performances, and you don't need to quite see it edited together yet. You can tell like we got it, and it's just such a good tool, also just for the crew to see the footage big, and if there's certain jokes, everyone's there, and you're hearing laughs, and you're realizing, oh, this works, Right. And Paul was getting music from Johnny during the shoot. Like he's kind of just writing stuff from the script or from discussions that he's having with Paul. So he's getting, just temp score like on his phone, so he can plug that into the speakers, and he can we can be watching a scene and you can just start hearing the music potentially and see like how that would play with it. Or some of the needle drops, like Steely Dan, which he was playing during dailies, and so we knew that like, that was going to be in the movie. So it's just an amazing tool. And then I have notes that I take during these daily screenings, and I use that to cut the movie later on. And so by the end of the shoot, we know we have the movie. And sometimes we reshoot stuff. Sometimes we do alternate versions of scenes in case we know we're going to cut something out. It's a process that no movies do. I mean, honestly, it's like a luxury that he really keeps alive. They used to do it back in the day, and they just don't do it anymore. So it's invaluable.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up your note taking for this film, because I remember I'd read some interviews back when you had done Licorice Pizza, and I saw you had like a huge binder, right, full of notes. And I'm curious, what were some of the notes that you took for this film, and what were the tricky sequences for you to
I mean,
talk
it's mostly you're just writing down like specific lines that are sometimes ad libs or just random things that I mean, it's just like any sort of notes that you would take when you're just watching dailies, like back half, star, and just you'll know that that's something that will be good. And what I would do during the day, I wasn't going to set or anything. I was staying away from set, but I was just there like at the end of the day. So during the day, I still had a computer system that I was bringing along, and I would then transfer my notes into the computer once we got the digital footage. And then I could watch stuff again and start to piece stuff together and organize, based on our discussions already. So, it's just, there's, Paul likes, as you can tell, there's like little weird things that an actor does, or just weird idiosyncratic like things. Like those things are the things that he latches onto, anything that feels real or feels like not perfect, like that. I think that's one reason why Paul's movies are so interesting, is that he kind of embraces imperfections in certain ways. So that's like kind of, I now know that about him, and I can be in tune with that and like find those little things.
Yeah, I have a question about performance that I'll bring up a little bit later, but to kind of talk a little bit more about their shooting on set, or traveling with the filmmaker and the crew, where exactly did you go? I know we were talking a little bit about some of the locations, and I mentioned that you also shot here in Santa Barbara County.
Yes. So we started in Eureka, and that was for all of the like Bob and Willa in the cabin, and like the high school and all that stuff. And to be honest, I'm really glad that we started there, because everything in the cabin was shot like first, including the letter scene at the end.
Wow.
And so we saw dailies of all that stuff, and so we knew like we had a really good ending, and it really it really like solidified, like, okay, we know where we are going to start relatively, and we know where we're going to go, and it helped just the arc of the whole movie to have that. We shot in Sacramento. That was a lot of the prologue and the bank robbery and the car chase at the beginning. We shot
the Christmas Adventures house.
And the outside of the Christmas Adventures house, which is Reagan's old mansion.
House, yeah.
Yes, which I guess there's a little bit of something there if you want to read into it. And we shot in Borrego Springs for basically all the like desert stuff at the end and the chase and all that. And San Diego for the very beginning raid, and El Paso. El Paso for all the Benicio section, and then Lompoc for the Sisters of the Red Beaver section at the La Purisma mission. So that's all at the mission. Shot the DNA test scene is in the chapel there, and all the stuff like on top of the hill and all that. So those are our big like locations.
Very cool.
The Christmas Adventures scene in the sort of bunker or whatever underground, that was a set that they built. Yeah, with the diorama.
Yeah, and well, you also brought up the whole, shooting on both 35 and on VistaVision using, specific cameras, which is old format, right? It's decades old, but this film and last year's The Brutalist, I think, kind of brought it back into conversation again. How did working in this format affect your editing workflow, and what were the possibilities or challenges that it brought to the table?
It didn't really affect the editing of the actual movie. I mean, we're still editing digitally. Everything gets scanned, and that's like what you're actually working with. It really was more for the end when we were, because Paul's goal was to have these special VistaVision presentations, which there is one down in LA at the Vista. So which meant we had to get projectors ready, and then that also meant that we had to make a print in VistaVision. And Paul's always been like really into doing photochemical finishing. He likes to, again, it's the imperfections thing. Like trying to let it be perfect. So we had to kind of adapt some of the technology, because there were, of course, a few visual effects, and some of the Super 35 had to be filmed out to this special size. And then, there's just like negative cutters it's like a complete dying art. So we had to find the negative cutters, and you get film equipment and stuff. So that's being done. We had like a whole film department that was handling all that stuff. But as far as like the actual editing of the movie, it really didn't affect it that much. We just had to. The only thing was that I think they told us the movie couldn't be like over a certain length because of the platter of the film. So, but I think that was fine, because we weren't going to go over 3 hours.
Right.
Yeah. But Chris Nolan, the last Chris Nolan movie, there was like a limit, and so that movie, which is over 3 hours, Oppenheimer, they were like right at the edge there. So, so it's like some of those kind of things, and you do also. With film, there still are reels, like the old days when they had the cigarette burn. So you still have to think about, okay, where are the reel breaks going to be, so that you don't cut off lines for the few movie houses that still do that. So we're always thinking about that kind of thing.
The question about actors, which you briefly brought up, it's interesting looking at the different imperfections or interesting line reads or mannerisms that they have. And I was curious about your work as an editor, and if you could talk a little bit more about the relationship between editing and performance, if there were particular actors in this film who gave you more material to shape or to play with in your edit.
I mean, I think we got really lucky with this movie just because everyone is really good, and the nuance, there's, Leo is, he has that like the humanity and the father-daughter relationship down. There's that emotional core to it, but then there's also just the comic timing and just the physical humor, and so there's just everyone gave nuance. I mean, even Sean Penn's character, which is of course like larger than life and crazy and insane and all that, but there is you do kind of feel bad for him, I hope, he just wants to be a part of something. He just wants to find love, and it's kind of tragic at the end. It really is. So it's just finding those little nuggets.
He just wants to be a Christmas adventurer.
I know, like that's so sad that like that's what he's reaching for.
They reject him.
I know. And he survived a crazy crash, and he still couldn't get in. It's terrible.
Were there any moments that were like improvised, or was it for the most part largely sticking to script?
Like some of the phone call stuff with Leo, just little nuggets here and there. Paul's not like one of those directors where he's like, you have to say the lines exactly how it is. And he really does involve the actors in how sometimes things get rewritten, or sometimes things will like we'll like shoot it, watch it in dailies, and then we'll shoot it a different way. So it's I mean, he's really a like actor's director,
right?
I would say, and that's why he always is able to get really good performances.
Yeah, and I mean this film in particular, right? It's such a sprawling cast, especially I love the opening sequence for like the first like I don't know, 30, 40 minutes where you just follow the activities of the French 75, right? Like you mentioned, shot in San Diego, they're kind of doing all these robberies, bombings, things like that. How did you juggle so many storylines and characters while keeping the narrative cohesive? Talk us through that, that process.
Well, if you mentioned the beginning, that's interesting because we work sometimes not struggling, but like there always is like a balancing act of like how long should that be? Because of course you could make it really quick if you needed to, but you need to set up Perfidia. She's such a like dynamic part of the beginning, and you're not going to see her till the end, or you're going to hear her at the end. But she's the prologue,
Right.
So we had to find like that perfect balance of like giving that like enough meat and enough of a good setup, but still like just moving the story along. So that's why it kind of has this pace to it where you're, cutting out of scenes kind of quickly and just like launching yourself into like the next thing just to kind of move it along and give it like an energy, So, yeah, I mean, I think it also just goes back to like the peaks and valleys of trying to kind of thread the needle of the different kinds of tones that are going on in this movie, and the sensei area, Sensei Bob. There's just like kind of a lot to keep track of that we were kind of moving around with. Willa's in the van and the soldiers are down below like knocking the gate down. So it's like, and Bob's on the phone, and so it's kind of like keeping track of all the geography of everybody and trying to just keep the tension high like whenever possible. So I mean it kind of evolved, depending on what section we were with. And then, kind of at the end for 1776, when at the 1776 camp, it's like we kind of wanted to draw things out there where she's sitting, waiting, and seeing all the guys, like, coming up, going through the door. So it's, I don't know, you just have to kind of choose your moments.
Yeah. I mean, I love the sequence, that kind of middle portion with Benicio del Toro's character, Sensei, because you have like these three different storylines. You have Willa, you have Bob and Sensei, and then you have Lockjaw and his people. Each of them find out, right, about Willa's phone all at the same time. Like the way the film is kind of cut together, it's really incredible.
Right, yeah, no, it's, that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because we actually, like the van scene, we actually shot that like 2 or 3 different times with like different things happening at different spots. So it's like we played around with like, when Willa's like phone was going to buzz, like, cause you could move it around to different spots. You could move, when Lockjaw finds out to like different spots. So it was just kind of playing around and trying different versions. And then we ended up settling on what worked the best, which was this.
Right. I also wanted to talk about if you talk about the different themes of the film, right? So if you could walk us through how your editing and your work helped create and reinforce some of the main themes of the film. The one I'm thinking of is there's a really powerful cut where Bob is talking to Willa's high school teacher, and the teacher says something to the effect of like, growing up with a mother can be very difficult. And then the film cuts immediately to a shot of children in an immigration detention camp. Can you talk us through that moment or other moments where those themes are come through the cut?
It's interesting that that scene actually was not always in the movie because the movie's long and we always were trying to figure out what are little things that you can cut out that you don't really need. So for a while we actually went straight from Bob with the teacher, and then you start hearing the music of the hotel and the car pulling up and Lockjaw getting out, like just to meet the Christmas adventurers. But it kind of, a few months ago, or before we had to lock, all of this stuff was happening with the camps and the immigration, and we started shooting this movie January of last year. So that was before the election and all that stuff. So this kind of became like a timely movie as we were cutting it and, beginning of this year. So, so we ended up putting that scene back because we wanted to have the images of, the people in cages, just because it kind of felt very timely now. And it just helped reinforce, I think, that 16 years later, he's still doing this. And it seems like now this is like even a bigger camp. Yeah. So he's has more power. So we kind of trimmed it down to be just a couple images, and then so we made it work by and I think it's nice to have it actually.
Yeah, I mean the opening sequence where it takes place in the past, like that camp is much smaller than the one that you cut to later on. It's like this sprawling.
Yeah, I mean it kind of is like endless. Yeah, and there's some takes of, I think they were walking all the way down, and they got a lot of extras for that, and I think they even built those fences to kind of make this camp. So, yeah.
Can you? There's one point where I thought was very funny, and I think I heard some good laughs in the audience during this part. We see Bob watching the film The Battle of Algiers, and I was curious if you could talk to us about the influence of that film and its editing, or other major cinematic influences that helped guide the project and your work.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of the sensei section has some of that, with the soldiers bashing in the doors and, people running around. And actually I had rewatched it the other day, and it was interesting, like at the beginning of Battle of Algiers, when all the women are like planting the bombs, it kind of is like in the prologue when the Alana Haim character and Perfidia are like going in through the security and like planting the bombs. So I don't know if that was like on purpose for Paul, but it kind of, I don't know. Yeah. I made that connection. But definitely French Connection was like something that we talked about for the like first car chase after the bank robbery. Right. And so like on purpose, that scene, we're not playing music, and it's very much like we're in the cars and we're hearing all of the like crunching of the metal and the cars hitting the streets and the squeals, and it's very like loud and in your face, and there's the real crashes. So that was kind of the intention of that. So that was something. And I'm trying to think of some other movies. He wasn't really saying like, these are all the movies that I'm referencing. He has such like an encyclopedic knowledge of various things. That, even this end song, The American Girl, like he's a really big like Jonathan Demme fan, and it was connected to him for a while. And then if you think about Silence of the Lambs, it uses that same song. There's just things that he just pulls from.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely French Connection. Like we watched when we were on location. He got a print of that, and like all the crew watched that. Very so cool. That was like a fun thing to do, like right before we shot that sequence. So that for sure was something that he wanted on everyone's mind.
Yeah, a little PTA film club.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah.
Speaking of action sequences, I mean, this film has really exhilarating ones, especially that final car chase in the River of Hills, which is really great. And you're no stranger to editing action sequences. You were first assistant editor on Bad Boys for Life.
I was, yeah.
Can you reflect on your experiences editing action sequences and how this particular car chase came together?
Yeah, I mean, I was really only on for production of Bad Boys for Life. And what was interesting about that is like total opposite of this, where we were in LA, they were shooting the movie in Atlanta, and they were just sending the footage, and it was the kind of thing where by the end of the day, you had to just like roughly edit the sequence together and like send it online to the directors so they could watch it the next morning. And they would be shooting like little sections, like the next set piece or whatever, or sometimes there'd be like holes, and you would just fill it in with like some text. So that's what was interesting about that, is that we were just getting like little sections at a time, and then cutting that on and then sending it back and then cutting it. So, and we had to do sound effects and we had to do all this stuff like kind of quickly. Because then they could see like, if it's not working, then we have to reshoot it or something like that. So that was my kind of experience on that. But for this, we had, so for the River of Hills sequence, this is kind of what we call the end chase. That was really, what I did was I kind of, we had the locations of like, it's kind of broken up into like 3 parts, 3 locations, like when it first starts, and then kind of the area where Bob comes in, and then the Texas dip, it was called, which was kind of for like the last bit right before like she goes over the hill and like down. So they had kind of already picked those locations, and then it was about just shooting all from all the different points of view. So like in front of Willis' car, behind Willis' car, behind Tim's car, in front of Tim's car with the other cars in the background. So it was kind of just like, I was making string outs of all the different perspectives and then kind of picking the best bits of those. And then, they shot all of the close-ups of everybody in the cars and like the rear view mirrors and all that. So it was like finding the bits of that. So then it just was, I just started, assembling things together, and showing Paul, and it started out really long and without music, and then we just started like whittling it down. We sent it to the sound department, and they just put in all the revs and a bunch of stuff, so we could kind of get a little sense of like what that would be like, and like the road noise and things like that. And then I just, just start whittling it down and just seeing like how much you can take out and how it still be effective. And that Johnny's music was like kind of becoming this percussive thing. So we kind of were, then I was changing cuts a little bit to kind of match that. And so, it's just like an evolution. And then once we got to the sound mix too, we could even like ramp it up even more. And like there's a moment before she sees Tim like come right over the hill where we kind of like drop out all the car noise. And it's just, you're just hearing kind of the like whooshes of the road and stuff like that. And so that was something that we like did in the sound mix to kind of, again, add like kind of a valley before you see him, and then the music ramps up and you hear the car going up again. So it's just playing with different things. And, we didn't do any green screen for any of that, the car stuff. That's like all shots practically. And I think you can tell with the performances, because everyone's there in the cars. It feels real, like it's the camera's shaking, that, because it really was shaking on the mount there. So, that was very challenging for the production to shoot, but I'm glad it all like came together.
Yeah, I'm also glad that you brought up the, working with Johnny Greenwood's soundtrack, which is kind of my next question about music in the film. You've edited music videos for Paul, including for the band Heim, whose member Alana is a member of the French 75. How did your experiences in cutting music videos, if at all, influence your approach to this film's rhythm and or if you could just talk about, editing and synchronizing shots to Greenwood's score? How did that come about?
There's always like a rhythm, even if there's not music, there's always like a rhythm of editing, just like kind of this instinct that you feel like that you need to cut first at a certain moment. I think that's like, at least for me, like I feel like I have some like just instinct of like a moments to cut. And the way people talk has a musical way to it, so you kind of just get tuned to that. And it's just it's a lot of people are like, I will never cut to music. I never cut to music. I'll do the scene as is, and then like the score is like its own thing. But I feel like it's a little bit of both. You do, of course, don't want to cut every single thing to the beat of the music, but it's like there's some moments where you like, it actually is affected to, target like a moment with a piece of a score, or like with a drum hit or whatever it is. So it's like you just have to feel where it feels right. Because sometimes when you're sitting there in the audience and you feel that the picture cutting is like working with the music and like hand in hand with the music, it's satisfying in a way. So I feel like that's kind of how I approach it, you know.
Yeah.
And Paul too. Sometimes we have the piece of music in, and he'll like, let's actually like cut it like right on this like note or whatever, because it just feels right. I don't know. That's what it is. If it feels right, that's when you want to do it.
You've worked on projects outside of PTA's films, so Bombshell, I brought up Bad Boys, Trumbo. How has working with Paul influenced the way you approach editing other projects and vice versa? How Paul's work, or your work with Paul, how's that influenced your editing for other projects?
Well, I think it goes back to the imperfections thing, because other movies, there's so much that is done these days. It's really sad, but like all the beauty work that happens, and just trying to fix every single thing, the fact that things are digital now, there's like a scuff somewhere, and it's like erase it, it's like make it perfect. So I try to sometimes have a little bit of Paul in me when I'm doing that. I'm like, you know what, we don't need to do like a digital, split screen here. It's like, let's just make it work in the edit, They didn't have these tools back in the old days, and there's all these masterpieces, so you can make it work. It can be like, sometimes can be like a lazy thing to be like, oh, we'll just fix it all like digitally. Of course it helps like when you have disasters or when you really need to, but I don't know. It's like just sometimes like something was shot and that's how it was shot, and so you just have to make it work. Sure.
I wanted to get to audience questions in a moment, but I have one more final question I'd like to ask real quick, which is related to the fact that we have many undergrad students in our department who want to be editors in the audience, most likely. Do you have any advice that you'd like to share with those students?
Well, I think it goes back to what I first said. It's like really try to find a good core group of people, a good support system. I gravitated towards production, and a lot of my friends did too. And so it was like, that is something that, if I had just gone down to LA by myself, like, I don't know what would have happened. And you never know where you're going to get a job. That's the thing. It's like a friend needs help on something, and then that leads to something else. And like even just meeting Paul was through like a friend that I met here, became an assistant at a production company. They needed another assistant. I worked there for a couple years. Then I was a post PA on one of their movies, met that editor, and that editor recommended me to Leslie. And then now, so you just never know, you never know where you're gonna go. So, so that, and just, I've been really lucky with Paul to just stay with like, there's loyalty. You have to really even though you might not like get a bump up right away, I was an assistant editor for a long time before I got Licorice Pizza, and I maybe could have jumped over to some other thing, but there's something, it was within me that was saying, stick with this crew, there's like loyalty here, this is a good group. And then I ended up getting bumped up for that. And so you can't be like too impatient sometimes. And when you, especially in editorial, I mean, you're working with people for, days and days and weeks on end, sometimes 10 hours a day. And so when you find like people that you really click with, like you want to continue working with them. So like find the people that you click with, I would say.
Great. Well, I'd like to turn things over now to our grad student researcher, Kelsey Moore, who will call on people for audience questions.
Wonderful film.
thank
Really,
you.
really wonderful. It's a ride, and you don't realize it's as long as it is, and that's a good sign.
Good.
So that's a part of the editing. They say that an actor's performance is made or broken in the editing room. And do you buy into that? Do you feel that when you're in there editing, that you're making that performance either better or perhaps not as good?
Yeah, I mean, I think mostly you're just trying to make it better. You know, there's maybe okay actors or people that maybe for a lot of the takes it just doesn't work, but then you only need one line reading to get it right, you know? So it's just finding the perfect line reading and going through different takes and piecing together. And, you can always cut away, if there's another person, you can always cut away to the other side if it's not as good and just use the audio. And sometimes you have to piece together two pieces of lines for the off-stage audio to make it work good. So yeah, I don't think we're like purposely trying to make people look bad. It's more just like, how much can we save them, So it's like you can only polish something so much. But you're always trying to, make it work in the best way. But yeah, I mean, if the rhythm isn't right, if there's too much space and it feels off, then I don't know. Again, it's to that rhythm thing.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't feel natural,
Right.
something's going to feel off.
Hello. Thank you so much for the film. That was a wild ride. I work in film as well, and I'm just kind of curious as an editor. There were like parts of the film that really felt like Birdman, like the long takes with the kind of improvisational jazz. So I'm kind of wondering, was that something that PTA conceived of early on, or was that something that you found in the edit to like let the long takes be as long as they were?
I mean, Paul likes long takes. I mean, if you look at a lot of his movies, he does a lot of like oneers. And this movie, I think, probably has the most edits of any of his movies, really. So, because he often will just say, like, we're going to do. Right. There's some shots in Phantom Thread where it's like, we only have this one take, or shot, and then we just had to choose the take. So I don't, he didn't specifically say that, but there's something when you stay with a performance and you don't cut away, it kind of feels more authentic, because it feels like you're not being manipulated. So I would say that it's maybe one of the reasons why he does it. And when you can sit and just watch a take for a while, you can just like look around. It's like kind of nice to see what's happening in the shot. So I feel like that is another thing that happens.
I just want to say, well, this film was an experience, like a film that we need right now. I loved it. And I noticed you were talking about like the imperfect editing. Does that apply to like continuity-wise, either of imperfections, or is it something about like pacing too?
Yeah, I mean, it can be continuity. Yeah, I mean, there's for sure weird cuts. Then it's just sometimes there's just something you want to use, and then they only did it one way in a certain thing, and you just have to you just go like frame by frame and you see what's the best way, and it just, hopefully if you're like in the emotion of the scene, it just doesn't, you don't really see it. But of course, you could analyze every single frame of so many movies and there would be continuity errors. Yeah, I try to have the continuity be like below performance. Obviously, actually Leo was really good at continuity, just in general. I think he's just such a professional. Mm-hmm. He would like always drink at the exact time. Like it's ingrained in him. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it's, Paul would be like, we really want to keep this in, and sometimes he's like, I like it like that. Even if it was kind of rough, and then you just kind of try to polish it a little bit, and I don't know, it just makes it, again, it's just not, that's just, having it be not perfect is like, there's something to that,
To the like middle section of the film, when you were cutting around the boys drinking beers in the car. What do you know if Benicio's line about a few small beers was improv or if that was something in the script?
I know that's becoming like a meme thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was. I mean, he might. Honestly, I don't remember if it was in the script or not. I have to go back and look. But I think he did say it like in multiple takes. But yeah, I mean, so much of the Benicio storyline was things that he added. I think even the Harriet Tubman line was something that he put in. He added so much texture to the character.
And you said he almost, there was like a last minute addition too, right, Benicio?
No, we always wanted him, but so with the writer's strike we had, or was it writers, actor strike, I guess? We couldn't start as early as we wanted to. So we had to start in January, and he was still shooting the Wes Anderson movie. So we were, I think, supposed to go to El Paso earlier. He was committed to the Wes Anderson, so we shot other stuff, went on a little bit of a hiatus, shot Lompoc and Borrego Springs, and then right when he was finished, he came to El Paso to shoot his section. So that was the last stuff that we shot. But yeah, I mean, it would be weird to not have him in the movie, so I'm glad that worked out.
Right.
I was wondering what the creative process is in deciding which parts of which takes to use, because there's so many, and especially with ad-libbing, how do you decide?
It's just I maybe treat it as a game kind of thing. You're my job is basically just you're always judging things, right? So you're just, let's say you have 10 takes, and we already know the first 5 are just not as good. So then you just start watching stuff, and there's ways in the Avid where you can put these little locators or markers or different colors. So sometimes what I'll do is I have these the red marker which is in the Avid, and I'll mark spots. And so it's kind of you can, when you pull up the clip, you can then see where the red dots are in the duration of the shot. So you just start I start making marks like that, and then even in the scene, which is called a spin, which is basically the folder where you have all the shots. I'll sometimes I'll put kind of asterisks for maybe the best, what I think might be the best take, and I'll do star, 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 great back half or whatever, and I'll kind of raise it up in the if there's a line of takes, so I'll raise this one up to the top, and then I'll take maybe take 6 and 7 had the really good middle, so I'll put good middle, and I'll put those up a little bit. So then when I am working on the scene, and we're kind of trying to piece things together, and let's say we have a good ending from the last take, but we just want to find some good stuff for the middle. Then I know okay, the 6 and 7 had good middle stuff. Then you just start playing those, and you're just analyzing every line, and then you just start cutting stuff in, trying it, and oh well, let's try the other take. What feels more natural? And it's just honestly, there's a lot of just trying stuff, until it feels right. There's so many versions that are just going to go in the trash, and then because you got to keep trying and trying until you then end on what the final thing is, and luckily with the computer, you can save all the different versions. So then you can make little comments to be this was the long ending version. This is it, and then you can always go back, and so you're always just referencing things, and you get to know the footage so well. You sometimes I even oh yeah, this is the scene with take 9 is the best one. I mean, I've been working on this movie for 2 years now, so I know the footage really well. So that's kind of my process, even though it sounded probably crazy, but.
Thank you, Andy, for coming up to UCSB.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for coming.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.